So hello everybody and welcome to our Wednesday bi-weekly coffee chat with elder care attorney Rob Slutsky. We are just thrilled today to have a guest speaker, Marlene Stocks from Senior Transition Services. Marlene has provided compassionate yet objective downsizing, decluttering, and relocation services since 2008. Marlene's outstanding professional performance has been recognized with excellence in senior move management as her special trait. We're very proud and very excited that we have her as our special guest today. So I'm going to provide a warm welcome to Marlene Stock. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Heather, and thank you to Rob when he joins us. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I'm especially happy to see so many of my friends that I haven't seen for so long, colleagues that are also serving the senior industry. So it's nice to be reconnected with them. And I wish you all well, and I hope if you haven't gotten your vaccine that you're on the list pretty soon. My team was fortunate to be vaccinated, so we're happy, definitely happy about that. So my topic today is to talk to you about the emotional side of downsizing. And I think what I'm going to be sharing with you is not going to be new to so many of you, because you already know a lot of this in the work that you're doing with your senior clientele. But I'd like to just share some of the things that we encounter when we deal with our senior clients, and especially how we help them through this whole role of transitioning their home, their lives into another home. Usually it's retirement living. As senior move managers, or we're really project managers, we've been working in this field for 14 years. And in that period of time, we have served over 1,100 clients. So we have certainly experienced this whole emotional drain of downsizing quite intensely with our clients. We recognize that moving is traumatic, that it's emotional, that it's physically taxing, and it's draining, not just to the clients in transition, but also to their families. There are many moving parts to the work that we do. Our clients are primarily moving from larger homes. Often they're like 4-bedroom homes, moving into 2-bedroom apartments in retirement communities. And you might imagine that they accumulate a lot of stuff. Many times it's generations of stuff that finds their way into their present home. We help them first and foremost by doing that move preparation, creating a floor plan of the new apartment. We help them identify the things that they'll be taking with them into the new apartment. We help to coordinate the packing and the moving of those contents. Then we help to unpack and recreate that feeling of home for them, and then return many times to the home that they're leaving behind to remove the remaining contents. When I meet with my prospective clients for the initial consultation, I often see the sadness in their eyes. About 99%, almost all of the prospective clients that I work with have that sad look in their eyes, which makes me feel bad for them, but it also says that they need some extra care to get them through this process. That's pretty much when we slip into an additional role, not just senior move manager or project manager, but I see us then slipping into a role of loss manager. And many times the loss that they're feeling is the loss of a spouse, the loss of mobility, the loss of independence, the loss of their home and their possessions, the loss of vision, memory, and just their overall health may be in decline. So We try to put ourselves in their shoes, how they're feeling as they go through this transition, and use that to help us as we're helping them through the process of getting from one home to another. So several things that we do to help them through this emotional time of downsizing. And I think what's very important from the onset is that we validate their feelings of sadness and anxiety and loss and uncertainty, to let them know that yes, we understand, maybe not as intensely as how they're going through this particular process, but just to let them know that we're hearing, or that we're seeing in them, that this is not an easy time for them. Then what I like to include in my initial presentation to them is that they have a sense of empowerment as we're working through this process. I'd like them to know that they are in charge. They're the ones who are making the decisions. They're the ones who are going to be calling the shots, that we're helping them and guiding them and reinforcing and coordinating and implementing for them. And I think that's just very important for anyone to know, that they still have a role to play, that they are in charge. They're the ones that are going to be making a lot of these decisions happen, and let them know that it's not just going to be taken away from them. So I like to present kind of this partnership, so that it helps to, again, minimize that emotional strain on them. I also encourage them to tell their stories. They have many wonderful stories from their own lives, and they have stories about the things in their homes. And I think that by them saying what those items or what those memories mean to them, it helps them make, again, this transition, this downsizing, a little bit easier. Bring it out. Let's talk about it, even if we're sorting through things or discussing a floor plan. It helps them, I think, to bring their emotions to the forefront, and from our perspective, we want them to know that we care and we're interested in the lives that they've led and what they feel is important presently in their lives. I think it's also very important for them to know, as they're going through this emotional strain, that they need to have time to make good decisions. They need to be able to look at this process so they can make good, unrushed decisions about the things that they are going to be taking with them into their new homes, or in many cases, what they're going to be leaving behind. You can't go through decades worth of assorted treasures in your home and get that accomplished in a weekend. You just can't. And that would just add even more stress and more of a burden if they tried to do that. So the message of, let's take it one step at a time. Let's do a little bit and move the process along so that it's not such a daunting task. Because again, recognizing that this is emotional, we want them to not have any additional stress, not additional emotion that will make it even more difficult for them. We also want to give them options. So those options about what they're going to be doing, about their remaining things, there's very often a big fear among our clients that the adult children will come in and just bring in the dumpster and throw everything away that they don't take with them to their new home. I hear that many, many times in our conversations. So by giving them options of what to do with their things that they can't take with them into retirement living, I think that also brings down the anxiety level that they may be experiencing. So we run through the process of how we're going to handle this whole this transition and this downsizing process. And we encourage them to ask their family and their friends if there's anything in their present home that they aren't taking with them that these members of the family would like to have. Is there special furniture? Is there special artwork, books, china? Ask the family to identify these things, because again, that makes the senior feel a whole lot better if their treasured heirlooms find their way into the family. That legacy remains intact. Now, the problem with that is that many times the adult children don't want those items from their parents, and that causes a little bit of friction sometimes. And it's not necessarily the answer that the clients wanted. The grandchildren may not even factor into this, because the grandchildren are probably in college or have a very small apartment that they're just setting out on their own. So they don't want grandmom's dishes or marble top table or something like that. So while it's nice when family says, Mom, I'll take these things and I'd really like to have them, many times the reality is that doesn't necessarily happen. So if that's the case, then to give them another option is to say, look, let's see if we can sell those items. And Tim, you know all about that in the work that you're doing. And to be able to find a home for those items that could have some value and have them sold and get a return on investment for the client is very beneficial. Now, again, knowing how the market is, just because the client has something that they deem is very valuable to them sentimentally, emotionally, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to fetch a lot of return on their investment. So sometimes we see disappointment in that area. So once we've exhausted the selling option, then we like to go into the donation route and explain to our clients that just because these items are not going with you, the option is that you give them away, give them to others that would be able to use them in their homes. We do that by giving things to thrift stores, for example. And once we present that as an option, I can see that like the clenched fists kind of open up a little bit more of being able to say, yeah, that would be nice if someone else could use my older furniture or my older clothes or my kitchenware. I know they're not going to be thrown away. That's their biggest fear, I think, is having it thrown away. We do a lot of sorting of contents for our clients. For example, I have right now about 12 wigs in the office that need to find their way to the Asplund Cancer Center at Abington Hospital. They have an imaging department where they accept wigs, get them sort of recycled, cleaned up, and then they give them to women who can't afford them, which is a real feel good then for our clients. I've sent hearing aids to a hearing foundation in Minnesota. We like to take used linens and drop them off at a pet rescue. So any client that is a pet owner, that resonates for them. And they say, okay, my things again are not just being thrown away. Again, bringing down that level of anxiety. And it's really only at the very end of the process that we sometimes just have to discard things. Things just can't be found another home. We also encourage them to keep small representative assortments of things. Make a memory box of selected cards and letters, or to keep a place setting for 4 of their fine china and take that with them, so that they have a piece of that memory of all those nice family occasions that were so meaningful to them. And One other option that we like to give them, because what we often hear is, oh, I've got all these slides, I've got all these family photos, I've got films, what do I do with them? I want to keep them, but they take up so much room. We like to encourage them to use technology, to have photos and slides scanned, to have films converted into a DVD format, which then allows them to eliminate the originals and also copy the DVDs to give to family members. So it turns out to be a gift opportunity at the same time. We also encourage them that they find rewards when they've had their own successes with their downsizing, whatever that reward should or could be, as far as going out for a walk or having a glass of wine, or just doing something that they enjoy doing, to be able to say, okay, you accomplished something in this whole process. So we're always trying to find the positives for them, to underscore those positives, and to focus on the benefits as they go through this traumatic time of downsizing that brings a lot of emotions to the forefront, and let them focus on the benefits. Let them look at the light at the end of the tunnel and be able to see that they're going through this to have a simpler, more relaxed, more cared for lifestyle in a retirement community. So those are a couple of thoughts that we have gleaned over the years, and how we like to approach that emotional side of downsizing for and with our clients. So I'd be eager to hear your thoughts, suggestions, questions, and I'll leave it up to you now.
Thank you so much, Marlene. You gave so many great tips, and I especially love the one of saving a place setting for 4 people of your china. I think that would preserve a lot of memories and great times, and just a wonderful idea. So
and it's actually rather radical when I watch the expressions on the faces of my clients when I say, why don't you just use your Lennox for every day? And there's this horror that usually comes about them and says, but I need everyday dishes. Well, why don't you make every day a special day and use your dishes? And
why not?
why not? Just don't put them in the microwave. That's all. Don't put the gold rimmed Lennox into the microwave. That would not be a good thing.
Great idea. Does anybody have any questions or comments to share with Marlene? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I have a sort of a downsizing adjacent situation.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. So my family tree is sort of a funnel situation. So I have my elderly parents around the corner in the house where I grew up, and I have no siblings. I have a grown daughter, no cousins, like everything is there. And their house is great for some, but their mobility is still good. My dad's 97, mom's gonna be 93 next month.
Wow.
They got the chair glide, that was important. And the house is constructed so that somebody with pretty limited mobility could remain there. You can live on the first floor. So I really want to hang on to that house. And at some point it's going to be silly to have 2 adults, one in their 90s, trying to run 2 households. So I expect that I'll return there to provide care either for both parents or for one parent remaining, because they kind of prop each other up like this. But I think each one does maybe less than 50%. And so I think that's around the corner at some time for me. So I want to approach, how do I consolidate? I've got my house where I've been almost 25 years, their house. I'm going to use the order that Marlene, that you talked about. But the emotional side of a grown child moving back into your house, moving your stuff around, any guidance you have around that is really what I'm here to listen to, how to handle the emotional side of moving back. I mean, I'm in their house all the time, but I don't stay there, and I would expect to be moving there sometime in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow. I guess the first question I would have for you is, whose house would it be emotionally? Is you're moving back into the house of your youth, of your childhood, right? But
But I can't take it over. It's still, it's the house that my parents bought when I was a baby. It's
right, but they're still living there.
right.
They're living there. So they theoretically, it's their house.
Absolutely.
So they would be able to establish the ground rules of how you would be functioning there in the house.
Yeah,
Yes.
they give me a fair amount of latitude to be bossy.
Oh, okay. So you would have some input into how things are being done.
The thing about being an only child is that you tend to be the third voice at the table.
Okay.
Rather than once there are 2 or more kids, the kids become a single unit, and you individually have less of a voice.
So how are they embracing this? Do they welcome this? Is this something that they're looking forward to?
We don't really talk about it because of what that means. It means that one or both of them is unwell enough to need somebody to live there, and they don't want to talk about it. My mother's still out walking her dog in the mornings.
Yeah.
Tiny little dog. But
so there's a sense of denial there.
There's a sense of we don't need to talk about that until we have to talk about that. And
right.
I'm a person who makes plan B before I make plan A. I'm like, well, if it goes wrong, what do I do? And then I'll work backwards to, the easy answer. If everything goes right, I can figure that out. But like, I build the lifeboat before I build the ship.
Well, and I think this is a conversation point that would dovetail very, very well into what Rob's going to talk about, because you would want to be prepared. You have to have that conversation with your adult parents. You have to have that. You have to have things set and things in order, and the what ifs discussed. And given their age, I mean. It's
like Dad doesn't want to talk about it because his assumption is he'll be dead and he doesn't need to deal with it.
And that's often what I hear from my clients too, when it comes to making decisions on their things. Why should I care? My kids will take care of it when I'm dead. Right. And I don't share that, because I think it's items that they brought into their home, they acquired, they inherited. And it seems to me that it's unfair to saddle the adult children with the responsibility of removing those contents. And it's a matter of, what is it that you want to do? I try to empower, like I said before, my clients so they make decisions about their own things, that the kids don't come in later with the dumpster and throw everything away. And especially if they know their parents would not like that scenario. So if you don't want the kids to make hasty decisions because they only have a short amount of time to get a house cleaned out and move on, then you have to be a participant in the decision making.
And honestly, no good decisions are made in time of crisis.
No, they aren't.
There will be a crisis because of the age.
Yes.
It just happens. You don't mean it to happen, but it's a hard discussion to have and really really, I can't tell you how many people I'm working with now that are in crisis, and that is a terrible, terrible time to start the conversation.
And
So if you could try your hardest to bring it up every day, is it time that we can have this conversation? Is now a good time to talk about the future? Something, because so many bad decisions are made, and that makes me more fearful than having the conversation.
And I will just chime in. I will just chime in for Marlene, because although we were going to move my dad and mom to assisted living from their independent living apartment, and that was crisis because my dad was coming home from, rehab, but then I have to say, the reason I'm bringing it up is because Marlene was so calming. She was such a calming force in the whole picture. So thank you. But we never ended up because then COVID hit and PS, here we are, right? So, but thank you. So I just wanted to bring that in. During crisis, it's a lot, but you did bring a calming feel to everything.
Thanks, Dana. And I appreciate that. I have a conversation often in a support capacity, and to try to reinforce when my clients have decided to make the move and they're uncertain. And is this the right thing? And will I have enough money? And so forth. And I try to be supportive and let them know that they're making this decision on their own terms, on their own timeline. They're determining this is the time for them. Hopefully, if they can move as a couple, which would be fantastic. Many don't have that option, but it's their decision now. It's their decision of what they take. It's their decision of what happens to the remaining contents. And it is so much worse when the children have to be involved in a crisis and try to quickly find placement, try to quickly decide what goes into the new home. And the client is more or less rendered useless because they don't have the capacity in any way to make decisions. And it's maybe a little bit of a scare tactic, and I don't mean it to be that way, but it is certainly reality that if you can control it while you can, it seems like it's the best alternative, even though it's a frightening process, even though what you're doing is you're admitting your own mortality. And, how many times do you want to talk about a will? Do you have your will drawn up? Do you have power of attorney? And that discussion is, we don't even need to talk about that right now. I'm fine. Everything is good. And then crisis comes. So I think the more you can do pre-crisis, the better off not only your parents are, but the whole family dynamic, which means it's better for you too. You have to kind of force that conversation at some point.
Please forgive me for jumping in. I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sarah, yes.
Hi. The analogy that I always used when I would do advanced care planning workshops was, would you want to put the smoke detector in after the fire? It's kind of like,
that's good.
That analogy of, we need to prepare for the crisis before the crisis. Yes. And thank you so much. I hopped on late, but this is amazing. Thank you, Marlene.
Oh, thank you. Who are you?
Sarah.
Oh, sorry. It's Sarah Burns.
Oh, Sarah. Okay, good. Thanks,
Sarah,
for
I'm
saying
stealing that line.
Thank you.
Sarah, we're all stealing your line.
You're stealing that line?
Yes, I like it. I like it.
Great.
Yeah, it's very visual, and who wants to be a part of the burn, right?
Exactly. And then it's too late. You look at it that way. It's like, well,
yes.
Yeah, that makes sense because then it's too late.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we want to be proactive, and sometimes that proactivity has to take place over a period of time. And timing is everything. And that there's the good time and there's the bad time, but to also, you have to be respectful of them, I think, and allow them to feel empowered. On the other hand, also know that there's a timeline here, and it's certainly going to make it better for the family if things are in place, decisions are made.
Thank you. Does anybody have any last comments for Marlene or any questions? Well, thank you so much, Marlene. That was
Thank
very
you.
informative. And
Thank you.
I will be including Marlene's information in the follow-up email. And now we'll have a little bit of time for Elder Care Attorney Rob Slutsky and any questions that you have for him.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Jerry.
Yeah, so you can unmute yourself and ask away.
Okay, mute myself. Okay.
Nothing? Come on. It's a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. You guys have to be inquisitive.
Really?
Nothing.
Yes, Marianne, do you have a question for Rob?
Yeah, I do. I mean, at one point, I would say about 17 years ago, my husband and I rewrote our wills. We've got the DNR, we've got all that stuff done. But technology has changed so much, and the epidemic has gotten everybody's attention on some of these horrible, hideous things they do when they stick you in a hospital. Would you think that the DNR should be rewritten for today's environment?
The law has changed on healthcare directives in Pennsylvania in the last 17 years. I will tell you that healthcare organizations tend to be a little bit more flexible. If they can read it and understand it, they're not going to put up roadblocks to it being implemented, because the last thing they want to do is not carry out your wishes. Financial powers of attorney, banks and brokerages will happily, almost gleefully, try to find a reason not to honor your power of attorney, cause every roadblock in the book. I never understand this part because they create a negative impression with their clients when they do this, but financial institutions are far more difficult. I think the bigger issue isn't so much the document as, do you want to have a conversation after 17 years about what you want, because you have changed in 17 years. Your thoughts have changed in 17 years. The people you may have appointed as your advocates 17 years ago may have changed. So there's a lot of things that might suggest you should have a conversation with your family and your legal advisor. But on the medical side, I would say that doctors, hospitals, other medical providers are probably more likely to be respectful of your wishes, even if they're not in the most up-to-date documents.
Okay, thank you.
And Rob, what insight can you give to someone that does not have a family member or a friend who would be willing or able to make decisions on their behalf in the event of a crisis or medical situation?
Well, this is an issue that's coming up a lot lately, because the court systems are being overwhelmed with guardianship proceedings, and that's your last best tool that you don't want to use. But courts are overwhelmed, overloaded, and frustrated. They are trying to push people into using what are called less restrictive alternatives. Now, less restrictive alternatives typically come in the form of some sort of written document that you prepare ahead of time. If you don't have one, or you don't have someone you can name, then what we have is Act 169, assuming everybody here is from Pennsylvania. So Act 169 was passed in late 2006. It is called the Healthcare Representative Act. The intent is admirable. But the problem is that in function, in reality, it's a challenge. So what Act 169 does is it says, hey, if you have someone who's a close friend or a family member, with a blood relation, here's a hierarchy of people who could theoretically make decisions for you if you are, quote unquote, incompetent under Pennsylvania law for medical decision making. The problem is, first of all, there's often confusion between incompetent for medical decision making and incapacitated, which is where you need a guardian. They're two separate things. Incompetent is a medical determination made by a physician in a certain circumstance. Incapacitated is a legal determination made by a judge. For the judge to make the decision that you are incapacitated, the judge will need to speak to someone with a medical background. However, the way the statute is written is very confusing to lawyers and doctors. The statute says, if the doctor says Mrs. Smith is incompetent to make medical decisions, meaning she lacks the ability to understand the outcomes to such an extent that she really can't provide proper consent to a procedure. So if she is in that condition, the doctor can say she's incompetent. And then the doctor can look at the statute and go through the hierarchy of either blood relatives or close friends and say, okay, I'm going to talk to her son, her nephew, her friend, and they can make medical decisions. But then the statute goes forth and says, this person, even though the doctor has just said they were incompetent, if the decision to be made is regarding end-of-life planning, which is a very squidgy description, because if let's say you're looking at something that right now isn't end of life, but could be if the care isn't provided. What it says in the statute is that if the decision is an end of life decision, even an incompetent person can countermand or undo the direction given by the healthcare representative, the person under the statute who's appointed by the doctor to make those decisions. So it's really, really confusing, because on the one hand, it says, hey, doc, we're going to take away all these lawyers. They're annoying. They're expensive. Let's get the judges out of the room. We're going to let you say that Mrs. Smith is incompetent because she doesn't understand the consequences of the medical procedure that you are suggesting, and therefore she can't give consent. And you, caring, responsible, intelligent physician, are going to talk to her son, who she never wrote a document, but he's the guy in the room. He's the only one you know, and you feel that he's acting in her best interest. But then the statute says she can say, well, I don't want to do what my son says, if the doctor interprets the ultimate outcome as being something regarding end of life, generally withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining care. But then the issue comes out, well, what are we doing here? What if I'm looking for a biopsy of something that could be stage 4 cancer? Could the failure to do that be withholding or withdrawing life-sustaining care? So it's a very confusing statute, and I can sit here and have a lovely conversation because they taught me how to do that in law school. But doctors don't want to have these conversations, and doctors don't want to be lawyers, and doctors don't want to be in the middle of a situation, and doctors don't want to handle this. So you know what doctors are going to say? They're going to say, I don't really care what the statute says. Mrs. Smith lacks capacity. I am uncomfortable taking the direction of someone who I don't know and hasn't been appointed in a written document. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send it up to my ethics committee, and they're going to make the family get a guardianship. So that's a very long answer to a very short question, but it is a very challenging situation. And I say this because it's been confronted. You know, I have done well in excess of 400 guardianships in my career because I've represented an area agency on aging protective services unit for 21 years. And my own private practice, where a lot of lawyers refer me guardianships because they do them so often. And judges are overwhelmed. And I'm based in Montgomery County, although I do guardianships and I have clients in all 5 of the Philadelphia metropolitan counties. And I will tell you that in Montgomery County, where the orphan court judges are awesome, but overwhelmed, they are trying to push people to use Act 169. And I have had respectful discussions with them, and I say, hey, you guys are right. The statute is a great alternative, but doctors don't get it. Doctors won't use it. Doctors are always going to defer to the court system because they don't want the liability and they don't want to be fighting with families over what's right. And that's the problem. It's not a legal problem. It's a practical problem. And I have trained doctors. I have done presentations to doctors, but I'm telling you, doctors don't get it, not because of a lack of intelligence, but because this isn't what they focus on. And when they've been given, CME courses on this, it's often by their ethics people in the hospital, as opposed to practicing lawyers who are doing guardianships every day and actually seeing clients go through these processes. So it's really challenging when there isn't documents in place because, it's hard for people to guess what you want or what you would have wanted if you were capable of articulating your wishes in a coherent manner.
Show of hands, who's seen I Care a Lot on Netflix? Just had to throw that in there. I just saw it.
Okay, I would love to address that.
I realized
if you are on my my blog list, I just put out a blog about that. Like, what was it, Heather? Yesterday or the day before?
I think it was yesterday. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you my opinion on that, because while entertaining and salacious, that is one of the worst perversions I've ever seen. I, again, have been doing guardianships for 28 years. I have exposure to professional guardians on a regular basis. And that is such a inaccurate portrayal of most of the guardians that I've been dealing with. These poor people are good-hearted, honorable people who are criminally undercompensated because of the way our law is in Pennsylvania. And yes, in my 28-year career, we had one guardian in Pennsylvania who was a real snake. And she was, however, had been convicted of a felony long before she became a guardian in our state. And our state had a failure because we didn't do background checks on guardians. That was the only person as a guardian that I've dealt with in 28 years who ever did anything dishonest or inappropriate or lied or overbilled. The guardians that I deal with on a daily basis, because as someone who represents an area agency on aging, we have to get guardians appointed on a weekly basis. And the guardians that I have been dealing with, again, are honorable, caring, decent people who are criminally undercompensated by the system and criminally undercompensated because there is no funding source. The bulk of them are not getting paid what you saw in that show. And I only was able to watch like the first 15 or 20 minutes before I had to leave, but I knew where it was going. The bulk of professional guardians are appointed for people without family and without resources. The bulk of them end up in nursing homes where the guardians are given $100 a month by Medicaid. This number, which was a terribly low number when it was established in 1997, has never been raised. Guardians are on call 24/7, 365. Yeah, some people go to nursing homes and they don't need a lot of love. Some people are going to the hospital and having complicated medical issues come up constantly. They have behavioral issues. They have assets that need to be managed. If you're very lucky as a guardian, you are getting, after the court approves it, you're getting $100 an hour. In our 5 counties, and I can't tell you what the rest of the state does, but I can tell you that in the Southeastern region, guardians do not get paid an hourly rate unless they get court approval. Okay, so in the rare instance when they are, there are some assets that they can get paid from, they have to let the judge look at what they're charging. It doesn't happen that way. And in that movie, you had a judge who seemed like a caring person, but wasn't even questioning anything. That doesn't happen here either. Probably in at least 50 or more % of the cases, the alleged incapacitated is appointed counsel or has their own legal counsel. And in Montgomery County, where I practice most of the time, we now have a rule: everybody gets counsel. So there is no case where a person is unrepresented in court like you saw in that show. Now, our state doesn't compel everybody to get counsel, but the attorney who's filing the guardianship has an obligation within 7 days of the court hearing to notify the court and say, hey, judge, I really think this person needs counsel, or this person doesn't need counsel. And you know what? If you're an attorney who's going to practice in front of that judge again, and you say that person doesn't need counsel, and somebody brings them to court, and they then talk to the judge, that judge is going to look very unkindly on you. So any ethical attorney is going to be very cautious about saying to a judge, the person doesn't need counsel, unless it's a situation where the incapacity is brutally obvious and the family is completely aligned as to what's in the best interest of the older adult. So when I saw that, and when I see that, and again, I know it, telling the truth doesn't sell. It doesn't sell news. It doesn't sell, movies. Telling the honest to God's truth of what the reality is in the world isn't going to sell anything. Saying that, and I say this as a lawyer, we see lawyers on TV. I have met lawyers in my life that are like the lawyers you see on TV. But the vast majority of lawyers are reasonable, kind people who do the right thing, who contribute to charity, who are wonderful human beings who I admire and have learned so much from over my career. So I know it's entertaining to see that stuff, although scary, but I would suggest that we all take it with a boulder-sized grain of salt, because my experience is that judges are diligent around here. They care about the older adult. They never have 2-minute hearings like that. There is one county in the 5, which I will not mention, that has had a history of quick hearings like that. But other than that, the judges want to make a full record. They want to see the medical testimony. They want to see the person. They want to give the person an opportunity, even if the person is cognitively impaired. They want to give the person an opportunity to express their concerns if they want. And the judges have made it very clear when they appoint legal counsel, I don't want you, lawyer that I'm appointing, to act as a guardian ad litem. A guardian ad litem is supposed to look after the best interests of the individual. They want these lawyers to be advocates. So even if the lawyer thinks the client is incapacitated, the lawyer's job is to advocate the position of his client, which means even though I know my client needs a guardian, I'm going to go into court and fight for their position, even if I don't like it. So what was presented in that movie was a complete misrepresentation of what I have seen over 28 years. Now, maybe that is in some states that way. I don't think so. And let me tell you something. After we found that one guardian, which was about 7 years ago, and it was all over the news, they found the guardian and they made significant updates to the laws to accommodate that and avoid that ever happening again in Pennsylvania. So despite my general complaints that Pennsylvania doesn't react quickly, the orphans court judges and the legislature act pretty quickly in that case, because we don't want to come off as a state with a reputation that doesn't take care of our older adults. So yeah, nobody's perfect. And in every profession, there's a couple of bad apples. But by and large, and in my experience, the guardians I deal with are honorable people who are underappreciated, overworked, and criminally underpaid. And when I say that, when you think about somebody being on call 24/7, 365 and getting $100 a month for that, they're getting below minimum wage to handle that person's care, that person's finances. Think about that. They have insurance, they have overhead, they have staff, they have their own time involved, they have care meetings, they have care calls, they have to authorize care. They often will visit once a month at a minimum to the facility where the person is. How do you do that on $100 a month? Think about that. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like if people are getting the impression that that is somehow representative of how the guardians that I know are, completely fictitious. Again, it was based on a number of different situations in other states where there were bad actors, but those, I believe, are unicorns, and they are not representative of the overall community of guardians in this country.
Good to know it's fiction, and appreciate it.
Well, I think it was based on a couple of bad cases that actually did occur, but I think they put everything together and kind of made one really horrible human being.
Yeah. there were a few in there.
And this blog will be posted in the upcoming weeks. It has not been posted to our blog.
Oh, it didn't? I thought because I know I gave it to our poster.
Yes, but not yet. Not yet.
Oh, it's up. I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Well, Heather, I think she might have posted it and not sent it out yet, like posted it on the website.
Yes. I'll put it out in a newsletter.
But if you want my opinion, I wrote it in pretty clear terms on that post. If I haven't verbalized it enough for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty well thinking we got it, Rob.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I was clear about this. No issues with articulation here, buddy.
Well, and this is what I love about working with Rob and for Rob, is that he is passionate about what he does. And I think it speaks volumes for how he represents the families that he helps and assists. And that's why I am very passionate about what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Any other questions for Rob?
I think Mary Ann does.
Well, I actually have a statement. One of the things I heard Rob say a couple of years ago was that being an elder law attorney had made him a better human being. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. So thank you for being available for us when we need you.
Well, happy to do it. Happy to do it.
If anybody else has a question, I'll stand down, but I have a legal question.
Sure, sure.
Please.
Continuing my story, so I'm the only child, and I expect that I will sell my house and move around the corner to take care of parents or parent and stay in that house. What legal aspects of making that transition do I need to keep in mind so I'm smart about what I do?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what position you're looking at it from. To protect yourself or to protect mom and dad or what?
Both?
Well, let's talk about one thing I could think about. I know nothing about your parents or what they need or what they don't need. But let's say you move into their house to take care of them.
Right.
So at some point, depending upon their care trajectory, their needs, and how they decline, if they decline, you may one day be seeking medical assistance or Medicaid benefits for them. Okay? So what I would first suggest is that the moment you move there, or even a few times, a few days before, maybe when you put your house up for sale, change your address for purposes of taxes, your car insurance, and anything that identifies you. And here's why. Under Pennsylvania law and federal law, if you were to provide care for your parents for at least 2 years prior to them applying for Medicaid or medical assistance, and your care was essential to help them stay in the home and prevent them from needing nursing care, and they needed a high level of assistance. Obviously, if you just went to their house and they were playing tennis, that's not going to work. But if you were living with them and providing some sort of support and assistance so that they were able to stay out of an institutional setting, then you would be subject, if you did that for at least 2 years, and I could document it medically, you would be subject to or eligible for them to transfer the house to you without a Medicaid 5-year look-back penalty on that transfer. So that could be a very significant asset protection tool. And I will tell you that I do it at least 2 to 4 times a year. I just had a situation in Philadelphia where the son had moved into mom and dad's house, and both of them ended up in a nursing home at the end of last year. And this son had done everything he could, and these two were really in need of a lot of attention, and he provided them with that attention. And I was able to transfer a $350,000 house to him and get parents on Medicaid without a penalty. So that's number one. Number two, one of the things is if your parents are still cognitively intact, and I'm hoping they are, make sure that they have up-to-date, comprehensive advocacy documents.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure their powers of attorney are up to date so that you don't have grief later when they can't sign new ones. And then, not honking my own horn here, you can do it with anybody. But the point is, you really do need to, if you think mom and dad are starting to go on that decline, as somebody earlier said, it's better to think ahead and at least get a good elder law attorney to look at the situation, try to do an assessment, and then plan ahead and give you potential options for various possible scenarios. Some scenarios are mom gets sick. Some scenarios dad gets sick. Some are mom and dad get sick, or they both stay healthy. And then you can look at different scenarios and say, this is based on this is what we want to do for planning.
I'm already doing some level of care. I've done wound care for daily wound care for both of them from time to time over the last year. I stay there if I need to stay there, cook and clean up if I need to. They're still pretty decent getting around. Convinced my dad to start using a cane just a month ago, because walkers are for old people. He's only 97, so he has time.
Understood.
I think he's figured that everything that could kill a man has already had its shot. So he's basically running with scissors.
Do me a favor and take down his basketball hoop.
Yeah. We got
We don't want him doing any like triple backflip dunks or anything.
I got his doctor to send a lovely physical therapist over to do a balance assessment and walk him through the house and all the spaces outdoors he goes. That was great. But yeah,
Well, here's a very vivid way to get him to use a cane. Show him a picture of a guy sitting in a nursing home.
Oh, I read them the riot act about falls like once a month. No, what got him to do it? He was standing next to my mother outdoors and he just wasn't walking around. He just spontaneously lost his balance and he fell into her. And she got a little bit more hurt and he wasn't hurt at all. And I said, you need to stop. And that was what I was able to do. I said, you've got to keep your balance so you don't hurt mom. And
I don't know how if they are objectionably independent. In other words, there are people who speak independence, but if their loving daughter says, look, mom and dad, you need some help, or this is going to be problematic for you, then, and not knowing anything about their finances, it might be time to talk to them about getting some, at least, daily support. Now, admittedly, you're providing that daily support. I don't know about your availability, but maybe getting someone in there during the day, a couple hours, just to have eyes on them and stuff and give them a little bit of help in meal prep or whatever, that, excuse me. And depending upon, again, their financial resources, that could either be done economically through a licensed home care agency, or it could be done through the waiver program if they have limited financial resources.
okay. All right, thank you. And thanks everybody for listening to me ask questions of both people. So.
Thank you. They were great questions that you shared, and it gave everybody else an opportunity to learn from Rob's insight. Thank you. Well, I want to mention, we're going to allow people to share some information, all of our healthcare professionals. But before we do that, and Rob will probably drop off, thank you so much again for joining us today. And I wanted to let you know we do have guidebooks. We have one for Chester County, one for Montgomery County, and one for Delaware County. We do service Bucks and Philadelphia County as well. We don't have guides for those counties just yet. If you are interested, please reach out at any time. You can email me or you can feel free to call, and I'm happy to make sure that we send you one. Thank you so much again to Marlene for joining us today. We greatly appreciate your insightful little presentation. Thank you very much. And I will be following up with all the contact information for Marlene as well.
Yes, thank you, Marlene. You always are a wonderful resource for all of us.
Oh, Marlene, you are muted. If you want to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I should know that by now. Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much, Heather.
Our pleasure.
And all of you, thank you.
And feel free, if you are in need of any of our services at Slutsky Elder Law, we are offering Zoom calls right now and also phone consultations as well.